Welcome to the Sound of Resistance. As a result of the latest attacks carried out by the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russian army has been in a great confusion. Russian soldiers escaping from the front often did not obey the attack orders from the Kremlin. Troops of the Russian army fled deep into the Donbas after suffering a major collapse in the Kharkiv region. In Kherson, the situation does not seem different. The Ukrainian armed forces have been clearing the Russian army for almost 2 months. Despite this, there are those who think that Russia still has answer in the region. But the Russian army is messing everything up. The mistakes made by the Russian army come one after another. The last fiasco of the Russian Air Force fell on the agenda like a bomb. Pilots of the Russian army opened fire on their own pier with KA-52 helicopters instead of the Dnipro bridge. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that a barge full of paratroopers was destroyed in the occupied Enerhodar area. But it turned out that this was the concrete bridge pier of the destroyed bridge across the Dnipro. This event attracted attention as one of the biggest fiascos to date. Video confirmation of target destruction was released by the Russian Ministry of Defense. The report claims that during a planned combat mission, a group of KA-52 helicopters received an order to prevent the movement of Special Operations Forces units of the Ukrainian armed forces along the Dnipro and destroy the enemy forces advancing in the Zaporizhia NPP. Russian helicopter pilots identified the barge using a sighting system at a distance of 15 kilometers. They then struck the bow and stern of the barge with 2 Wicker-guided missiles, destroying the imaginary enemy. The Ukraine war was a reflection of wonderland for Russian President Vladimir Putin. We think that the Russian army started to travel in this wonderland with Elias, because the Russians actually opened fire on the bridge pier near Kamyanka Dniprovska. It was the foundation of the bridge to Nikopol, built by the German army during World War II. The structure of this bridge was destroyed during the construction of the Kakhovka hydroelectric power station. This time, the news caused outrage among Russian military observers, because Russia had convinced itself that this event was real while presenting this news. However, everything showed disappointment, a great disappointment. Such a presentation of information horrified the public. Readers thought the paratroopers were barges and pointed out that he was targeting was not really a barge. Earlier, the Russians made claims about the attempt and defeat of Ukrainian paratroopers to land. In this way, they are probably trying to justify the stay of their troops on the territory of the Zaporizhia NPP. Russia is experiencing major failures in this and similar efforts. Russian pilots, a favorite of Putin, attacked many false targets. There have been many reports of attacks in which Russia smashed the pillars. So why couldn't the Russian Air Force, which is so trusted, achieve air dominance in Ukraine? Prior to the Russian invasion in February, air power analysts were pessimistic about Ukraine's ability to defend its airspace. Even more optimistic assessments assumed that Russia would launch a major air campaign to destroy the Ukrainian Air Force at its air bases, and that Ukraine would launch large-scale strikes with long-range early warning and long-range cruise and ballistic missiles to blind the ground-to-ground. This would have compelled Ukraine to try to move its moving surface away from the front lines for air missiles and to constantly strike a lost drum at Russian planes entering too far. Meanwhile, the defense of the Ukrainian frontline troops will be left mostly to portable air defense systems, at least to make Russian low-level attacks a dangerous possibility. A barrage of cruise and ballistic missiles struck Ukrainian air bases, ammunition depots, long-range SAM positions, and radar stations when the invasion was launched on February 24. But the anticipated Russian air superiority campaign did not materialize. Instead, Russian troops consisting of 1 or 2 aircraft at a time launched attacks on targets in and around Ukrainian cities close to the border, such as Kyiv, Kharkiv, Sumy, Chernihiv, and Mariupol. Follow-up attacks on lightly damaged or missed targets were infrequent, and Ukrainian mobile SAMs began to damage both fast jets and helicopters. More importantly, the Russian Air Force did not appear to have planned a large-scale operation to suppress and destroy enemy air defenses, and at the same time proved incapable of coordinating large complex formations that would otherwise be expected to allow for diverse air defense. Russia's inability to plan and implement large, complex airstrike packages largely explains one of the country's greatest unforeseen weaknesses during this war, and its inability to maintain air superiority over Ukraine. However, this situation created a great disappointment for Putin, because their expectations from the Russian Air Force were high. The main reason for the failure of the ground operations, especially by the Russians, was the inadequacy of the Russian airstrikes. The Russian warplanes, which could not follow the Russian tanks, caused great destruction for Russia in the region. The planning, logistics, and command and control capacity required to conduct complex air operations is enormous. Each participating pilot should be able to understand his role in the entire operation, including precise timings, routes, and procedures, as part of a thorough briefing and planning process prior to each sortie. Tanker support is critical to ensure that aircraft has sufficient fuel to complete the anticipated mission once all the various attack elements have been deployed from their different bases and gathered to their rendezvous point. Coordination between the various offensive elements is complex even before the shooting starts. Because Russian pilots are trained almost exclusively to fly in pairs and have little exposure to larger exercises, achieves relatively few flight hours compared to most NATO combat teams. Lack of support from tankers in most operations, and since they were not doctrinally trained for major air campaigns, it is perhaps not surprising, in retrospect, that the Russian aerospace forces proved incapable of waging a Western-style air war against Ukraine. In addition, the inability to quickly suppress and destroy the Ukrainian mobile SAM threat meant that Russian aircraft would soon have to stop flying beyond nearby frontline areas. Ukrainian air defense began to inflict significant damage to Russian fighters flying at medium level, even near the front lines. Manpads were a constant danger at lower levels. Flying at very low altitudes make it difficult for aircraft to detect and connect to radar-guided SAMs. But it also greatly restricts the pilot's field of view. This type of flight leaves the aircraft vulnerable to short-range manpads and anti-aircraft fire. Thus, crews of Russian Su-34 fighter bombers with night flight training were able to bombard Ukrainian cities near the borders at night, when manpads operators struggled to detect them. However, this local air superiority of Russia in the Donbas did not translate into a major battlefield activity against Ukrainian ground forces. This is due to the fact that they have more than 300 modern fast jets with theoretically flexible capabilities to carry a range of air-to-air and air-to-ground munitions. Despite having jets, most Russian air crews have very limited precision-guided downing opportunities. Also, they do not have access to the ubiquitous aiming pods and most Western fighter aircraft. Russia's ground attack-focused Su-34 fleet regularly uses precision-guided munitions and has a retractable, fixed forward targeting system, but the ability of the rest of the Russian battle fleet to locate, identify, and then precisely strike vehicles is very limited. This means that they are generally limited to attacking fixed targets with satellite or TV-guided weapons, or dropping unguided bombs and rockets from low level at coordinates provided by ground troops. In the Donbas, this meant that Russian fast jets were largely ineffective in supporting Russian offensive operations against Ukrainian ground forces. With the latest air defense system shipments to Ukraine, it seems that the power of Russian pilots in the Ukrainian airspace is completely gone. Now, for them, there is only death in Ukrainian airspace. That's why they want to escape from here instead of flying here.